Have you ever felt like being fully yourself makes you feel unsafe? Like you need to soften who you are and your opinions and hide what you know in order to make yourself easier for other people to understand or accept. Maybe you learned that being sensitive made you seem weak to other people, or being intuitive made you seem too weird, or maybe being outspoken or powerful made you difficult or threatening to other people. So you learned to keep those things under wraps or stay smaller. This is the witch wound, and in this video we're going to talk about what the witch wound is and some of the history behind it, and then why sensitive women feel it so deeply and that deeper wounding underneath it. This video is kicking off a mini witch wound series on my channel, so make sure to subscribe if this content calls to you, because in my next few videos I'll be sharing more deeply about the signs that you have a witch wound and how sensitive women can heal and find your voice again. And make sure to stay until the end of this video for a mini witch wound healing meditation. So let's get into it. What is the witch wound? The witch wound describes a collective and personal fear of being seen or judged, rejected, punished, excluded, or even harmed for being different or powerful or intuitive or outspoken or spiritually connected in ways that maybe other people aren't, or just unwilling to conform to societal expectations or norms. It is both a collective and a personal thing because it's connected to the historical persecution of women and other marginalized people accused of witchcraft. Oftentimes, these were women who had intuitive gifts or skills, and that caused fear in others and fear from the greater power systems in society. To resonate with the witch wound, you don't have to have that conscious fear of being persecuted. It can show up in much more ordinary, modern ways. Things like people-pleasing, second-guessing yourself constantly, staying small and hiding your gifts, or not speaking up out of fear that other people will judge you or harm will be caused to you. This has historical roots. So what happened historically is that the major European witch hunts occurred roughly between the 15th and 18th centuries. So during that time, tens of thousands of people were executed, and in many regions, the majority of those people were women. These societies were structured around strong religious authority and patriarchal social systems and economic dependence on these systems. And so they also had strict expectations about how people were allowed to or supposed to behave. And belief in witchcraft was also totally real to many people because people believed that things like illness or infertility, crop failure, death, storms, and just other misfortunes could be caused by supernatural harm. So accusations often emerged when fear and social conflict, religious beliefs, gender expectations, and the need to explain these events all kind of intersected. And women were targeted for a variety of different reasons. And I'll talk about two main reasons here. One is for going against the system's norm and expectations. And the second is for possessing knowledge or skills that were outside of what was socially accepted. So first, let's talk about the everyday women who violated social expectations and how this made them more vulnerable. Women who were argumentative or outspoken or economically independent, socially isolated, or even just involved with conflicts with family, neighbors, community, or just otherwise outside of the expected social roles and social conduct. These things could all attract suspicion. One example was Martha Corey, a woman who lived during the Salem witch trials, and she openly questioned what was happening in the trials and criticized them. And then she became one of the people who was being accused and actually was convicted of witchcraft and executed. And even her husband was convicted and executed for refusing to enter in any sort of a plea, refusing to play with the system, play in the games of that system. And this shows that while most of these things were around women, there were also men who got caught up in this witch wound patterning too. And I think this story captures something really important about the witch wound, because just speaking against what a group had collectively decided was true could make you dangerous and in danger. Questioning authority could make you a target, and refusing to participate in the fear narrative of the collective could put you outside of that group protection and put you in harm's way. So sometimes the safest thing we've learned was to just stay quiet. And that is really the root of why so many women today who experience this witch wound have a deep fear of speaking your truth. Especially when it goes against the group story or the group norms. For example, today that pattern shows up in the black sheep and scapegoat dynamics in family systems. When one person speaks up about the harm or unhealthy things that they have experienced or seen, and are then criticized, blamed, shamed, and even rejected from the family system. I know firsthand, because I experienced this personally in my own family system, for speaking up about harm that the system did not want to see. So I know that this can run so deep, because women have generations of history showing us that, you know, what could happen when we didn't keep quiet and stick to the status quo. And then that second thing that made many women the target was for possessing knowledge or skills that were outside of what was socially accepted. So this includes things like healing and intuitive skills. And throughout history, many of the people accused of witchcraft were women. And among these women were healers and herbalists and midwives and people who carried traditional knowledge about plants and the body and healing and birth. And these women often held these forms of knowledge that existed outside of the formal institutions. And this knowledge came through either direct experience or practices that were passed down from generations. These were also women and men who practiced divination or claimed prophetic abilities, like communicating with spirits, or who were believed to possess forms of knowledge that other people couldn't explain, like intuitive, esoteric knowledge. People would even seek help from these people when they needed help, but then get caught up in fear when maybe that same knowledge or power became either not accepted by the other people, or something went wrong, or they perceived something to have gone wrong with that healing. And this history unfolded within societies where religious and political institutions held enormous power over what people were allowed to believe and practice and even say. So women who violated these expected roles and challenged authority in these ways, or spoke openly, about these things, really lived outside of the accepted social structures, or became involved in these conflicts within their communities. And they could become particularly really vulnerable to danger or harm. And over the centuries, women's traditional healing knowledge was also increasingly pushed outside of these recognized systems of medicine and institutions as healing became really professionalized and regulated and dominated by men. So when we talk about the witch wound, we're really talking about a history in which women learned that possessing this knowledge could be dangerous. Being spiritually different or powerful or doing healing work outside of the accepted systems, even speaking against authority, like we talked about, just being different and being visible in these things could all be really dangerous. And that history is what makes the witch wound run really deep in many today. Because even though our systems have changed a lot, sensitive and intuitive women still carry that in their body and still experience the pressure to doubt what you know and suppress your intuition, suppress, what you perceive through your intuition, hide your spiritual gifts, hide your spiritual experiences, and just overall make yourself smaller in order to stay safe. So let's talk about some examples of how the witch wound actually shows up in everyday life, some common examples. Maybe you have an intuitive knowing or sense about someone or something, and you look for someone else to validate it. Like, hey, I noticed this. Do you see it too? And when they don't, you second guess yourself a lot and even might lose trust in yourself, not realizing that often they can't see it or validate it because they've shut off their own connection to their intuition, or they're too caught up in the social norms to be able to see it. Maybe you see something or feel something that feels to you like it's very wrong, but you don't speak up about it because no one else seems to be worried about this, and you have that fear of being targeted. Maybe you want to share your work or your feelings or your thoughts with others, but you don't because you don't want to feel exposed to people seeing those deeper, more vulnerable parts of you. Maybe you even change how you act depending on who you're around because it feels safer to be a different version of yourself or be smaller, be underestimated than to be fully seen and fully out there and expressed. Maybe you people please or shrink your needs to avoid being seen as selfish or difficult or dramatic or attention seeking. You might really crave community but have repeatedly felt like the outsider of the group. Maybe you hide your spiritual gifts or sensitivity because you don't want people to judge you. And the deeper wound behind all of this is actually self-abandonment, because soon enough, the worst consequence isn't the other people rejecting you. It's that you reject yourself first. You've learned to reject yourself first. You silence yourself before anyone else can. You question yourself and your knowing before anyone else questions you. And you abandon yourself to maintain that belonging or safety. But then you lose that within yourself. You lose that belonging and safety within yourself. And this is the witch wound that has been deeply internalized. But understanding this witch wound is a really powerful step in healing, because naming this pattern gives you enough distance to be able to observe it and enough context to start seeing your sensitivity, your fear of visibility, difficulty trusting yourself, and fear of judgment. All of these things you can start to see in different ways. And you can begin seeing how much energy you have spent monitoring and managing yourself. And you can begin to make changes and ask yourself, like, who would I be if I no longer had to organize my life around other people or avoiding rejection? Because while, yes, speaking up against systems can cause rejection, your soul suffers more when you reject yourself in order to stay aligned with a system that's not aligned to you. Being a healer with esoteric knowledge, or an intuitive, sensitive woman who sees and feels and knows things that others don't perceive, yeah, it can cause you to be rejected or criticized or judged by other people. But we also no longer live in a time where it's commonplace to be physically harmed or even locked away for doing those things. I remember years ago telling my therapist that I was super afraid to tell her about a spiritual experience that I had, because I was afraid that she would, that I would get locked away in a mental institution for it. But her response was really healing, because she was like, yeah, that's not a thing anymore. Unless you're harming yourself or others, you can't just be locked away or harmed for these types of things anymore. And even with this reassurance, healing this witch wound for me has been a process, and is a process for everyone, I believe. It's a journey of becoming safe enough within yourself to stop abandoning who you really are, and to trust what you know, and to speak up when you have something to say, and to create what wants to come through you, to allow yourself to be misunderstood without immediately changing yourself to try to regain that sense of safety or belonging. Because the parts of you that learn to hide are often the very same parts of you that you came here in this lifetime to heal and to reclaim. So with that, let's move into a short meditation, a short witch wound healing meditation to bring some healing to those parts of you. So go ahead, and I invite you to get comfortable in your seat. And if you feel safe and comfortable, you can close your eyes. Just begin by taking a few deep breaths. Just for a moment, get settled into your body. And notice any parts of you that feel more grounded or more relaxed. Maybe notice other parts of you that feel tight or tense after listening to this video. Just notice. Now imagine all the versions of you. All the versions of you who learned that it wasn't safe to be fully seen. The child who was called too sensitive. The young woman who stayed quiet when she knew something. The intuitive part of you that learned to doubt yourself. The powerful part of you that you made smaller in order to feel safe. Feel where those wounds live in your body. Maybe through a part of your body that feels tight or tense. And without needing to analyze it, just place a hand there. And picture yourself sending so much love, warmth, golden light to that part of you, to all those parts of you. And if it feels right, you can say out loud or internally, you don't have to hide anymore. I am willing to hear you and know you. And I am becoming a safe place for you to return to. And when you're ready, take a deep breath and slowly return back to the room. I hope you found this video supportive. Feel free to let me know in the comments what resonated with you. If you have any questions about the witch wound that you'd like me to discuss in future videos. And if this resonated with you, I invite you to subscribe to my channel to catch my next videos, where I'm going to be talking about the signs that you carry a witch wound and how to begin healing it in even deeper ways. See you next time.